So you continue to do more movies.
Yep.
You know, I mean, looking at your filmography, I mean, you mentioned Pearl Harbor,
TV shows.
Don't Say a Word, Slow
Good,
Burn.
I want to talk about the sitcom I did, which was another great experience for me. Good News, which was on UPN, which was created by one of the greatest TV producers of all time, Ed Weinberger, who had a hand in, Taxi, Mary Tyler Moore, The Cosby Show, Sparks, Sparks, and Sparks. I mean, just another guy who, was like, guy, you have the green light, and trusted me. And that I learned so much on that journey, man. It was just incredible, man. And we still hold a relationship to this day, man. And he's one of the greatest TV minds ever in the sitcom world. And that was just such a great experience, man, that I can't do an interview and not mention, the joy I had on that set, which was incredible.
Well, early in your career, you started doing stand-up.
Well, I started doing stand-up. Stand-up was always first.
Before the acting.
Stand-up was the girl that brought me to the dance.
Aha.
I started doing stand-up September 10th, 1992. I got to L.A. August 30th, maybe August 29th, 1992.
Aha. Okay.
So stand-up always came first. And it's crazy because my career kind of happened crazy because after 2 years doing stand-up comedy, I did Def Comedy Jam.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Which is considered the greatest springboard of urban comedy
Absolutely.
of all time.
Absolutely.
Dave Chappelle, Chris Tucker.
My brother Joe Torry,
Eddie
Griffin, Bernie Mac.
All of them.
You name it. Cedric. I mean, that was. I always say this, and I don't know why Def Comedy Jam gets a bad rap.
Does it?
It does. It's for some reason it does, but
okay.
To me,
I've never heard that.
To me, it's Moses.
Yeah.
It took a lot of brothers to the promised land. A lot of the black sitcoms during that time was because of what the success of Def Comedy Jam.
Right.
Def Comedy Jam with Bob Sumner, who booked every comic you ever seen on Def Jam from day one, and Stan Lathan, who directed it, and Russell Simmons, and Burlstein Gray, and I mean, just incredible.
Yeah. And let's not forget Martin Lawrence hosting it.
Martin Lawrence
took it to a whole different level.
Martin Lawrence and Joe Torry, are the reason why I'm doing stand-up. Those are the two guys who really inspired me to do stand-up. I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair talking to you, and none of those things would have happened if probably would have been no Def Comedy Jam. I'm just going to be flat out honest. And when I started doing stand-up, I just started grinding every day. I didn't give a fuck about going to clubs. I didn't give a fuck about women. I was just in comedy clubs 7 days a week, grinding, sometimes twice a night, working on my stand-up. And after 2 years of doing stand-up, of course I had a little leg in because my brother had an in. But even after the last year Martin hosted, we decided I wasn't ready. And it just so happened that when he took over the hosting gig, I was ready. Bob Sumner was like, hey, Joe, I think your little brother's ready. And when I found out I was doing Def Comedy Jam, I went on a tear. I gave up alcohol, I gave up eating meat, and I was just focused on because I know I had a shot. I know I leapfrogged a lot of comedians who've been doing it longer than me who deserved that shot over me. And I got it, so I'm like, I'm not gonna fuck this up. I'm not gonna make my brother look bad. I'm not gonna make Bob Sumner look bad. I'm not gonna make my class comedians look bad. And after 2 years of doing stand-up, I did that Comedy Jam, and it was probably the greatest moment I've ever had in my career because it was like the show that inspired me to do stand-up and doing it as my brother Joe as the host was like, I mean, next to, I don't know, I can't even explain it, but that's the greatest feeling I've had in my career to this day was the first time on Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah, no, I've interviewed Russell Simmons, and we talked about how, when he did Def Comedy Jam, the black community already knew about all these comedians. It's just the mainstream audience.
Yeah.
Just it wasn't on their radar. So
Yeah.
when they did that, he said it was almost easy because it was like, yo, we have all this talent,
right,
and none of them are getting national exposure,
right?
And boom, it becomes an iconic kind of show,
right?
But then you went on to do Fat Tuesdays.
Yeah. Fat Tuesdays was inspired by Def Comedy Jam. What Def Comedy Jam did for comedians nationally, I tried to mimic doing locally. I after the riots in '92. A lot of industry quit going to the hood to see black comics. And even though I was only 3 years in the game at that point, had no marketing, well, I took marketing in college, but I had no skills to run the business. When you're young, you're dumb, you just don't know. And I got tired of seeing a lot of black comedians, male and female, getting looked over because we were, you know, trapped in the hood. And now I had representation. I had agents, managers already, but a lot of my friends weren't getting seen. So, I had a manager at the time who had an inn at the Comedy Store, Worthy Patterson, who was my manager at the time. And we went to the Comedy Store and said, hey, guy wants to do a night, showcase black comedians. Boom. Happened in the belly room. From day one, it took off. And there was really, to my knowledge, and I'm still researching this, there was no really any white comedy club in the country that was successfully doing an urban night before Fat Tuesdays. And I've talked to a lot of comedians, and they had nights that lasted, but I don't think any of them had the impact that this had. And we're in production with a story about it right now, so I'll leave it right there. But it was, to me, other than Def Comedy Jam, the single most important comedy night in the history of comedy.